2 people, 8 hours, $500. That's what it takes to build a Conestoga hut, a lockable, insulated, weatherproof shelter that fits on a parking space and gives someone 60 square feet to call their own. Right now, these huts are showing up in communities from Oregon to Ohio, and they're sparking fights in every city council chamber they touch. But 745,000 Americans were counted as homeless on a single night in January 2025. The shelters are full. The wait lists for affordable housing stretch for months, sometimes years. And the only thing growing faster than the tent cities lining sidewalks in San Francisco, Phoenix, and Denver is the frustration of the people trying to solve this problem. A decade ago, if you were homeless in America, your options came down to 2 things: a crowded shelter bed where you could not bring your belongings and might not feel safe, or a tent on a sidewalk. Tiny homes became popular as a middle ground, and the concept is appealing. Your own space, a door, a window, but building one costs anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. They take weeks to construct, require permits, skilled labor, and permanent foundations. For most communities staring down a homelessness crisis right now, tiny homes are too slow and too expensive to matter at scale. Eric DeBure looked at that gap in Eugene, Oregon, and asked a question that sounds obvious, but nobody was actually answering. What's the cheapest, simplest thing you can build that's genuinely better than a tent, but does not require a construction crew and a $50,000 budget? His answer was sitting in American history books. The Conestoga hut takes its name from the Conestoga wagons that carried settlers west during the 1800s. Same arched, rounded shape. Picture a structure about 6 feet wide and 10 feet long, with solid insulated walls on both ends, an insulated floor platform, and a curved roof made from livestock fencing wire bent into an arch and covered with layers of insulation and heavy-duty outdoor vinyl. The front wall has a lockable door and a window. Inside, there is a raised platform bed, room for personal belongings, and about 60 square feet of total living space. That's small, smaller than most bathrooms. But here's what 60 square feet with a locked door actually changes. If you have been sleeping on concrete under a tarp, worrying every night about someone stealing the bag that holds your ID, your medications, and every document you need to apply for housing or a job, a locked door is not a luxury. It is the thing that lets you start thinking about tomorrow instead of just surviving tonight. The construction process is what makes the whole thing scalable. 2 people with basic tools can build one in about 8 hours. The materials are straightforward: plywood, lumber, wire fencing, insulation, vinyl sheeting, and screws. With recycled and donated materials, the cost runs between $250 and $500. With everything brand new, around $2,500. Compare that to a tiny home at $10,000 to $20,000. There is no concrete foundation, no specialized tools, and no building permit required in most places because these are classified as temporary structures, similar to tents. But a shelter by itself does not fix anything if there is no system around it. This is where DeBoer's model gets interesting. His nonprofit, community-supported shelters, places huts in what they call safe spot communities. These are small clusters of 3 to 18 huts set up on parking lots, church properties, or land donated by local organizations. Each community has shared amenities, including portable toilets, a kitchen area, phone charging stations, and access to running water. Some sites have garden beds that residents maintain on their own. And there are rules. No drug use on site, no alcohol, no violence. Residents check in at night and leave during the day to pursue employment, services, or treatment. The initial stay is 30 days, extendable up to 10 months if someone is showing progress toward permanent housing. Monthly check-ins, camp duties, and maintenance responsibilities are required. 3 written violations, and you are out. This is not a crash pad. It is designed to be stable enough that you can actually get your life together, but structured enough that you cannot just park there indefinitely. The waiting lists prove people want in. At many sites, the wait is 60 to 70 days just to get a spot. People are lining up for a 6x10 shelter with no bathroom. That alone tells you how broken the alternatives are. Walk through one of these communities in Eugene, and it looks nothing like a tent encampment. Picture a parking lot behind a church with 8 or 10 arched huts arranged in neat rows, each with a small covered porch area out front. There is a communal kitchen tent where residents can heat up meals. There are portable toilets along the back fence. There is a table with power strips where people charge phones during the day. Some sites have garden beds that residents planted and maintain themselves. It's calm. It's orderly. It looks like someone actually thought about how to do this right. Regan Watchus from the Eugene City Manager's Office pointed out that the community appreciated the aesthetics compared to sprawling tent cities. And that distinction matters more than you'd think, because in every city that has tried to address homelessness, the politics come down to optics. A row of tents on a sidewalk triggers fear. A row of small arched shelters behind a church fence reads differently. It reads like a community solving a problem instead of ignoring one. By the time community-supported shelters had built their 84th hut, the program had become one of the most talked about homelessness initiatives on the West Coast. So, does it actually help people get off the streets? Jeff Howard is the name supporters bring up first, because his arc went all the way. He moved into a Conestoga hut with nothing, used the stability to rebuild, and eventually moved into his own apartment. He described having a safe, secure base to operate from as the thing that changed everything. Not the hut itself, the fact that he could finally stop surviving and start planning. James Clapp, a veteran living in a hut village built specifically for former service members, was more direct about it. He told reporters the huts pretty much saved his life. Before moving in, he had no way to keep his documents safe, no mental space to think beyond the next meal. The hut gave him enough ground under his feet to start looking for work. That pattern keeps repeating. Give someone a lock on a door and an insulated floor, and they start showing up to appointments. They start applying for jobs. Take away the daily anxiety of sleeping outdoors and worrying about theft, and people actually have the bandwidth to work on what comes next. It sounds too simple to be real, but the outcomes keep saying otherwise. Now, none of this works without the legal framework, and this is the part most cities won't touch. Eugene City Council passed an overnight camping ordinance that specifically allows people to sleep in Conestoga huts on approved properties. 20 huts maximum on parking lots. Churches can host up to 6. A private homeowner can host one. Each site has to be managed by a community organization with a 1-year operational agreement, including performance standards and city oversight. What that created is something most cities dealing with homelessness do not have: distributed shelter. Instead of fighting for years to build one massive centralized facility that every neighborhood opposes, you get small clusters spread across multiple locations, managed by local churches, nonprofits, and community groups. The footprint is smaller, and the political resistance is lower. And what surprised a lot of people was how quickly that resistance disappeared once the huts actually went up. Before installation, the complaints were predictable. Property values will drop. Crime will increase. It is going to attract more homeless people to our block. But once neighbors actually lived next to a safe spot community for a few weeks, the dynamic flipped. They saw a quiet, organized cluster with people coming and going during normal hours. They saw maintained grounds and enforced rules. The people who had previously been sleeping in doorways and parks down the street now had a designated place to go. Businesses nearby noticed the difference. The sidewalks were cleaner. The fear that people expected to feel never arrived. The success in Eugene started spreading. Walla Walla, Washington, became the second city in the Pacific Northwest to adopt Conestoga huts. Aberdeen, Washington started exploring the model. And then the idea jumped clear across the country to places with much harsher climates, which raised a question that could not be ignored. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. We cover solutions like this every week. That cold weather test landed in Athens, Ohio, where a nonprofit called The Gathering Place decided to bring Conestoga huts to a community with a severe affordable housing crisis. The numbers in Athens are staggering. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency found that for every one affordable housing unit available, there were 2.5 extremely low-income renters who needed one. In Athens County specifically, the ratio was even worse. For every 3.5 affordable units, 10 households needed one. The Gathering Place, run by Executive Director Ginger Schmallenberg, serves over 100 unhoused individuals in a typical 6-month period. Meanwhile, Timothy House, the only all-ages homeless shelter in Athens, has 15 beds. 15 beds for 100-plus people who need them. The math is brutal. Ohio winters are not forgiving. You can freeze to death in a tent. A Conestoga hut with its insulated walls and floor keeps that from happening. But Schmallenberg could not just put huts in a parking lot and call it done. Athens is not Eugene. Getting approval required a zoning code change to allow temporary housing shelters in multifamily residential zones. That meant city council hearings, planning commission reviews, and public comment periods where things got heated fast. Supporters pointed to the proven track record from Oregon, the dire housing numbers, and the fact that people were going to sleep outside regardless of whether anyone approved anything. Opponents raised concerns about property values, fire safety, and what they called spot zoning, the idea that one neighborhood was being singled out to bear the burden. Some college students from Ohio University, who rent houses in the surrounding blocks, pushed back on having unhoused neighbors right outside their doors. They worried about safety. Others in the room challenged that framing head-on, arguing that providing people shelter actually makes a community safer because it gives people who were previously sleeping in alleys and parking garages a monitored, managed place to go. The plan itself was modest. 3 huts to start, placed behind a screened fence in a parking lot next to the Gathering Place's property on North Congress Street. Residents would vacate during the day and check in at night, with access to a sink and a toilet. The power requirements for basic lighting and phone charging were minimal. It was as small and controlled as a pilot project could possibly be. In November 2025, Athens City Council voted unanimously to approve it. The law director addressed fire safety concerns by pointing out that the 2024 State Building Code had expanded allowances for primitive and semi-primitive lodging structures. Schmallenberg told reporters the first occupant would be housed that same weekend. The initial residents would be women vetted through the Gathering Place's existing programs. From heated debate to unanimous approval to someone sleeping safely within days. That speed is part of what makes this model different from almost everything else in the homelessness space. Now, the cold weather question goes beyond just the communities. These huts are insulated, which makes a significant difference compared to a tent. But they have no built-in heating of any kind. The design relies on insulation trapping body heat inside the structure, combined with whatever bedding and layers the resident has available. On a 20-degree night in January, the insulation helps, but body heat still escapes. This is where gear like the TerraShell thermal sleeping bag makes a real difference. It reflects your own body heat back to you instead of letting it bleed out through the walls. No batteries, no electricity, just physics. For someone in a Conestoga hut, or sleeping in a car, or riding out a power outage at home, it turns a miserable night into a survivable one. Link is in the description. The concept has now crossed an international border. In Victoria, British Columbia, a group of community volunteers built a prototype Conestoga hut based on De Boer's original designs, hoping to push established housing providers into adopting the model. The organizers were clear about their intentions. They weren't trying to start a nonprofit or build a permanent village. They wanted to prove it was possible and start a conversation about what communities could do right now instead of waiting for government budgets to catch up with reality. De Boer himself has said he wasn't sure how far the concept would spread beyond Eugene. He's noted that few cities are as willing to take ambitious approaches to systemic problems, but the construction manuals his organization sells have been purchased across multiple states and at least one U.S. territory. Huts have gone up from California to Washington state, now into Ohio and Canada. The idea has legs even when the politics around it stay complicated. And the politics stay complicated because every city runs into the same tension. On one side, the need is undeniable. People are sleeping outside in dangerous conditions. Shelters are full. Housing waitlists stretch for years. Something has to fill the gap right now, today, not 3 budget cycles from now. On the other side, critics ask a question worth taking seriously. If cities get comfortable with $500 huts, will they stop pushing for the harder, more expensive work of building actual affordable apartments and permanent supportive housing? Will the stopgap become the plan? It is a fair concern. Nobody involved in these programs pretends that 60 square feet with no plumbing is not a long-term answer. Schmallenberg in Athens made the point directly. These huts exist so that people waiting for a housing voucher or an affordable unit are not left sleeping outside in December while they wait. The tents people use now can be deadly in extreme cold. You can freeze to death in a tent. You are unlikely to freeze in a Conestoga hut. That is not a solution, but it is the difference between someone being alive to receive permanent housing when it opens up and not being alive at all. The stepping stone argument only holds, though, if communities actually treat them as stepping stones. The evidence from Eugene suggests that when the program is run with structure, with rules, check-ins, time limits, and real connections to services, people do move through. Jeff Howard got an apartment. James Clapp started looking for work. Tracy Jocelyn, another Eugene resident who used to give tours of her hut with obvious pride, used the stability to start rebuilding her life. The system works when the system is actually enforced. What also separates this from most homelessness interventions is who is driving it. This is not a federal grant stuck in committee for 3 years. It is not a state budget allocation held up by election year politics. In Eugene, community volunteers like David Quayle and Jim Schmidt spent countless hours building huts in city-approved lots. Rotary clubs in Walla Walla, Washington donated funds for materials. Ohio University students interning at the Gathering Place testified at city council meetings to get the Athens project across the finish line. That is the part that makes this replicable. A church group can decide on Monday to build 3 huts, buy materials on Tuesday, and have people sleeping safely by Friday. When you are talking about human lives and winter temperatures dropping below freezing, that speed is everything that matters. Community-supported shelters now sells detailed construction manuals through their website, designed so that anyone with basic carpentry skills can follow them. The instructions cover every step, from cutting the plywood to bending the fencing wire into the arch. De Boer built the system that way deliberately. He did not want the concept to live or die with his organization or any single city's political courage. He wanted it replicable, affordable, and available to any community that saw a need and decided to act instead of wait. De Boer described the Conestoga hut as a new take on an old look. The covered wagon carried people through unknown territory towards something better. The hut does the same thing on a much smaller scale. It carries someone through the gap between the street and a permanent home. It does not solve homelessness. Nothing this simple could. But it gives a person standing on the edge a floor to stand on, a door to lock, and enough breathing room to figure out what comes next. And right now, that breathing room is something 745,000 Americans do not have. 745,000 people, $500, one afternoon. The question is not whether the huts work. The people who have lived in them already answered that. The question is whether your community will let them be built. If you want to see how another community is solving an impossible problem with almost no budget, that video is on screen now. Subscribe so you don't miss it.